Hello and welcome to Newsfeed, your daily dose of what people are talking about online, from news stories to what's trending. Tub thumping, saber rattling, call it what you like, but Vladimir Putin is certainly succeeding in upping the threat of nuclear strikes in the Ukraine conflict. And in the last few hours, he's been at it again, accusing Ukraine of planning to use a dirty bomb. Basically, a conventional missile carrying radioactive materials. Now, such accusations are unsubstantiated, and many feel it is Russia who are more likely to resort to nuclear weapons. And these recently released pictures show the Russian president observing exercises with the country's strategic nuclear forces. Some relief for Ukraine, though, is the arrival of more weapons to resist Russian missile attacks.
So Ukraine is receiving some new military hardware from the U.S. It's a jointly produced air defense system called the NASAM, produced by both the United States and Norway, and it's meant to help Ukraine defend its airspace. Now, this air defense system was going to be very useful to shoot down short to medium-range ballistic missiles, fixed-wing warplanes, as well as the new kamikaze drones that the Russians are using in Ukraine to attack civilian infrastructure. Those kamikaze drones, of course, being purchased from Iran. Now, Ukraine's plucky air defense have so far done a remarkable job in securing their airspace and preventing the Russian Air Force from establishing total air superiority. So far, according to the UK Defense Intelligence, around 55 Russian fixed-wing aircraft have been shot down, and nearly a quarter of Russia's attack helicopters have been shot down, a significantly high attrition rate. And now with these new weapon systems that the Ukrainians are receiving from the US and from other Western partners, it's meant to help at least defend against this wave of missile strikes and kamikaze drone strikes that have been damaging civilian infrastructure and killing and wounding hundreds, as well as attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And so it's a bit of bad news for the Russian military, in addition to the more reports that we're receiving of sabotage and partisan activity, both in Ukraine against Russian occupation administrative forces and against the railways that Russia depends on moving its military equipment from Russia into Belarus. So far, momentum still seems to be behind Ukraine as they're seeking more support from the West to try to defend their airspace from these Russian missile attacks.
Now, there are protests across Iran to mark the 40th day of Mahsa Amini's death. In northwestern Iran, a large crowd gathered where she's buried as activists called for demonstrations. Videos posted online show hundreds of men and women who defied security forces and shouted "women, life, as well as death" to the dictator. Amini died last month after she was detained by Tehran's immorality police for not wearing her hijab correctly. It's alleged she fell into a coma after police beat her. Authorities have denied this, saying she wasn't mistreated and instead suffered a heart attack.
Crowds gathered near Mahsa Amini's grave in the western Kurdish city of Saqqez. This is Mahsa Amini's hometown. And elsewhere, anti-riot police have been deployed. There have been reports of protests and clashes in a number of Iranian cities, like in Tehran, Mashhad, Karaj, and some other towns and cities across the country. And some clashes have been reported as well. But we have to remember that our information are based on social media footages that cannot be independently verified. And this, with internet disruptions and blocking of social media apps, it's difficult to report with accuracy and with confidence. And also, some smaller businesses in Iran's Kurdish areas and also elsewhere, some smaller businesses have closed down to commemorate the 40th day since Mahsa Amini's death, and some over security concerns. The government blames the United States and Western powers for the unrest, and they believe that the United States and some other Western countries are trying to incite violence and unrest in Iran.
Iranian economist Karim Sadjadpour has tweeted that thousands of people are ignoring government road closures and refusing to wear hijabs. A cultural historian of the Middle East, Shiva Balagi, reminded netizens the reasons why the protests started in the first place. She wrote, "The message is clear. The protesters are calling for basic human rights for everyone. As the general public join the students, some netizens have started to call it a revolution and not a protest. Now, it's nearly time for the midterm elections in the US, and it's not looking great for President Joe Biden. The latest polls show he's facing the lowest approval rating level of his presidency. According to the survey, only 39% of Americans approve of their president's performance. He normally averages around the 40 to 42% mark. Just over 1,000 adults voted, including nearly 450 Democrats and around 370 Republicans. That suggests the Republicans could win control of the House of Representatives and also the Senate on November the 8th.
Rashid Sunak is now the Prime Minister.
And no, Joe, it's not Rishi Sunak. Take it from me. You are totally mangling the name of Britain's new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak.
We've got news that Rashid Sunak is now the Prime Minister. As my brother would say, go figure. And the Conservative Party.
Don't worry, Joe, we're not offended. But it wasn't just Biden's critics who jumped to social media to post about his mistake. It was lots of Brits as well who came with their typical British humour. This netizen pointed out the loud cheerings coming from the White House shows there was more enthusiasm for Sunak there than in the entire UK. And British actor Amanda Abbington made fun of recent political history in Britain, saying, "Come on, Joe, I know he'll probably be gone by the end of the week, but all the same." Staying with US politics, let's talk about the television debate between two candidates hoping to become Pennsylvania's next senator. Why do we care? Well, there are several reasons other than it was trending on social media. Number one, Pennsylvania is one of those swing states that hands power to either the Republicans or the Democrats. Two, one of the candidates is a real-life, bona fide international TV personality, Dr. Oz. He's also Turkish, by the way. And three, the other candidate is, well, not 100% all there. It could be John Fetterman's performance was marred by the lingering effects of a stroke he suffered 5 months ago. At times, he appeared to lose his trail of thought and paused abruptly. He says doctors are telling him that he's fit for the job. Take a look at these clips and decide if he'd get your votes.
And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up. I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking. And I do not believe in supporting the Supreme Court.
Dr. Oz, on the other hand, had the advantage of his year's worth of TV experience. Other hot-button issues such as the economy, immigration, and crime also took centre stage. But this comment from Dr. Oz won him a lot of flack from the pro-abortion camp on the internet.
Should abortion be banned in America? 60 seconds.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves.
Axios is reporting comments from both Republicans and Democrats in Capitol Hill, saying the debate was brutal for the Democrat nominee John Fetterman. A local NBC affiliate's online poll seems to back that. More than 80% voted for Dr. Oz as the winner of the debate. Not everybody agrees with that. Many actually sympathise with Fetterman. Joe here says the worse Fetterman looked, the worse you should feel about not supporting him. And it seems his campaign is seeing a surge in donations, $1 million additional in just a few hours, as explained by his campaign manager here. Talking of campaigning, the Global Security and Cybersecurity for Democracy group recently conducted an experiment on false ads. It found Facebook and TikTok had failed to detect misinformation in political advertisements, whereas YouTube succeeded. The researchers uploaded English and Spanish content that violated the platform's election policies. They didn't flag the content as political. TikTok, which doesn't allow political ads, was the worst. It approved 90% of them. Facebook was partially effective and allowed 25% of them. YouTube detected the ads and suspended the channels. Chris Stockel-Walker is a UK-based tech journalist. He says TikTok must improve in detecting these adverts.
TikTok is comparatively new compared to YouTube and to Facebook, and therefore it's less developed in terms of its technology, although it is worth pointing out that ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, is one of the world's biggest, and so they ought to be doing better. There is also another reason, which is that you see a lot more content through TikTok. We know, for instance, in the UK, 1.6 million videos are posted every single day because those are shorter. But that is no less significant a task for content moderators to look through, so it's not necessarily surprising that they struggle with this. This is a problem that is all across social media, and it's one that we do need to sort out. Whether or not you regulate is a more difficult question, because regulation is very, very blunt, and we know that this is highly politicized right now. The US Republican Party is claiming that Google prevents lots of its emails arriving into users' inboxes without any evidence. So you run the risk, if you start regulating, of bringing politics into this and one party deciding that something is correct rather than the other party. And TikTok's long been a political football, not least in the 2020 US presidential elections, when Donald Trump effectively made it his main opponent, even more so than Joe Biden, launching adverts on Facebook and Instagram that said that TikTok was a national security risk, obviously claims that they deny. In terms of whether this is going to significantly affect the outcome of the US midterms, I'm less certain. TikTok obviously is a huge app. It's used by a lot of people, although we have to bear in mind a significant proportion of those users will not be of voting age and therefore won't really have any say in the elections coming up.
Now, onto some stories making headlines around the world. Now, did you catch that extraordinary moment over the weekend when former Chinese President Hu Jintao was removed from the Communist Party Congress? Well, newly released footage shows an outgoing Politburo member removing a file away from Hu as soon as he tries to hold on to it. Second later, the former president was guided out of the room by an aide called by President Xi Jinping. State media outlets have reported that the 79-year-old was feeling unwell while Chinese TikTok banned searches for Hu Jintao. Netizens were quick to discuss the drama on Twitter. Many like David here think that the 79-year-old did in fact look ill and there was no drama regarding his exit. But not everyone agrees. Co-chair of the European Council on Foreign Relations, Carl Bildt, says if there was really a health emergency, Xi Jinping would have showed some empathy, but instead Hu was taken away forcibly. Author and political scientist Ian Bremmer says the former president was publicly humiliated and the footage clearly showed power politics at play. Political commentator Mr. Ramaswamy said that it was probably the last time we have heard of Hu Jintao, and the world is not ready for what's coming next. Now, remember the lockdown. Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? But these photographs will make you remember. The Taylor Wessing Photography Prize, organised by the UK's National Portrait Gallery, has announced its 2022 winner. And it's a series of portraits called Laundry Day, capturing the mundane and slow life in lockdown. The photographer, Clementine Schneiderman, won $17,000 in prize money. The prestigious photography award picked its favourite after more than 4,000 submissions were made by hundreds of international photographers. Among some of the nominees are a couple of famous faces as well. So it's not just photos of boring laundry baskets. And that brings us to the end of today's newsfeed. Find this show on YouTube and do subscribe to our channel whilst you're there. Bye and see you at the same time tomorrow.